first couple formulas we'll talk about are the ampersand and concatenate formulas. Last time when we looked at our demo project management base, we left the first column as either the project name or it's a task name. But typically that's not always what we want to do. The scenario could be that you might have 2 website projects for 2 different clients, or you may have 3 SEO projects for 3 different clients. In those cases, you wouldn't want the first column to be named SEO every single time because that's confusing from a linking perspective and it's not good database management. We always want the first column of our database to be a unique value. And that could be achieved in 2 different ways. One is using the ampersand formula, or you can use the concatenate formula. Coming into our base onto the project table, we're going to reconfigure the first column in our projects table. Normally, we would want to have our client and our project name in the project name itself, just in case there are multiple projects named the same. On the name column, you can click on Customize Field or double-click to open up the field option configuration box. You can change the single-line text field to a formula field. Next, we'll use the ampersand function to create a formula to join together the client name and the project name. So first, you'll type in client and type in an ampersand and the project name. Once you save that, you'll see the client name and the project name are joined together. However, there is no space. Because it's missing a space, we have to go back in to add the space because Airtable does not know to do that automatically. To add a space, you want to put the space itself in quotations, so Airtable recognizes that as a text and not as part of the formula. So I added in a quote, a space, another quote, and another ampersand. So this formula is saying join together the client and a space and the project name. Once you save that, you'll see there's a space. This is still not always super clear, so I'm actually going to add a dash, or you can add a colon, or whatever is clear to you to denote the distinction between a project and a client. In my case, I'll add in a dash. Now my project name is complete with the client name and the project name. You can accomplish the exact same outcome by using the concatenate formula. Once again, in the first column in the projects table, I'm going to rewrite this formula. As soon as you start typing, Airtable is going to try to guess what you are trying to say. So even though I've just typed in CON so far, Airtable already brings up the concatenate formula because it's trying to help anticipate what I'm going to type. Once you see the formula or function that you're trying to use, you can simply click on it. In addition, all of the Airtable formulas will show up in a little box to the right with some green text showing you how this formula works and how it needs to be written. In this case, the concatenate formula joins different values through a comma. So you can join together the client along with a space, dash space, in quotations once again. Then add a comma and add in the project name. If the formula contains an opening bracket, you must also close that bracket. Once you've saved it, you can see that our text values have not changed in the first column and that this formula is doing the exact same thing as an ampersand. You can choose to use whichever method you prefer. It's completely up to you. To go through this one more time, we're going to go to the tasks table and do the same thing. I'll use the ampersand formula this time because personally I think that's easier to look at and to understand. So I'll go ahead and demo that example. In the tasks table, we want to join together the project name and the task name, because sometimes your tasks could also be named the same or very similar. So here I'm joining together the projects and a dash in between, and also the task name. I'll make the column a little wider so you can see the final result. Now you have the client name, the project name, which are combined as the project name, and also the task name. Now that we're looking at the tasks table, you'll see that the task names are quite long. This isn't ideal, so I'm going to show you a trick. We're going to turn the client name into an acronym and shorten that text. Back on our clients table, we're going to designate a client acronym to each one of our clients. You can create a new field called client acronym. The acronym should be something recognizable by your team. Now that we've got this client acronym, we're going to look up the client acronym on the projects table. So insert a new field on the project table. Again, I'll call this the client acronym. This is going to be a lookup field, which we explained in the earlier section. we're looking up from the client table. And the field we're looking up is the client acronym. Instead of saying Cherry's Coffee Shop in our project name, we would prefer to use CCS. So I'm going to update my formula. I've updated my concatenate formula to say client acronym plus a dash plus the project name. And now my project names are much shorter. It's not only impacting the projects table, it also impacted the tasks table. Let's take a look at tasks. Because we changed our project name, the linked record for projects is also shorter. Therefore, our task name is also shorter. You can use these acronyms to your advantage and use a combination of lookup fields and formula fields to create the name that you want. We also see some clients, instead of using the client name, they will use a client ID, which could be a number. They could use numbers for their project IDs. So really focus on what is going to make the most sense for your team. The next formula we'll talk about is trim. This is a very helpful formula because it removes any leading and trailing spaces in your data. For example, if your data isn't clean or perhaps it's getting manually entered in, it might have some extra spaces in the beginning or at the end. In the task table, I'm going to add in a couple of spaces inside of task 1 and task 2. So even though we don't see much in our formula here, if we copy these 3 values inside of a document, they're going to look a little different. I've got a Word document opened here. And you can see that the task 1, task 2, and task 3 are all different looking because of the leading and trailing spaces I've added. This is not a good thing to have. We can even take a look on the projects table as well. Because I've added some spaces, now the formula for my project will also be a little bit wonky with those extra spaces. So anywhere there's manual data entry, or perhaps you're getting this data migrated in from a spreadsheet, you're always going to want to trim the data first before you concatenate. We don't do this every single time, but we certainly will if the client's data is not clean to begin with. To do that, we'll go back to edit our formula. What we need to do is wrap the text field in a trim formula. Now that I've wrapped the project name in the trim formula, you'll see those spaces get removed. So now my first two project names are back to normal. And the same thing will happen to the tasks. I'm going to update my task formula as well to include the trim and wrap it around the task name. Now, if I copy the tasks again into a Word document, they will show correctly without the extra spaces. I would say trim is a helper function so that it cleans your data, but ideally you train your team to enter clean data in the first place and that everyone is careful about what they're typing into your Airtable database. Airtable also has a length formula. This is used to count the number of characters in a particular cell or in a particular column. And a great use case for it is, let's say in the social media example, maybe you want a Twitter post that is a certain length and you want to be able to count the number of characters as you're writing out the copy for your social media post. So inside of our base in the tasks table, we can create a new view called social posts. After we create the view, we can hide the columns that we don't need. I'm also going to create a column called post copy, which is the text that you're going to send out with that tweet. And I'm just going to add in some test data here. I'm adding in some lorem text just as placeholders. And then next, I'm going to calculate the length of this text string. I created a new field called length of post copy. And in the formula, I'm adding in the length formula and the post copy field. And this is going to grab the number of characters in that particular cell. So you can see my first record here has 25 characters, and my second one, which I'm going to edit a little bit, now has 356 characters, and the last one has 445. One of the things I want to call out is as you name your fields, your Airtable is going to continuously having more fields. And as you name your fields, make sure to name them something specific and clear, because when you have to maintain this database 6 months down the road or a year down the road, you'll want to know very clearly what this field is going to be. So let's use this length of post copy as an example. I could have easily said either character count or length or number of characters, all of those would not have been as specific as saying length of the post copy field. So making sure you're naming your fields something descriptive and clear and concise is a skill in itself, and I want to make sure you pay attention to that. Another text function we often use is the substitute function or the substitute formula. The substitute function replaces old text with new text, and you can specify what the old and new text are. Effectively, it replaces words or characters inside of your cell and replaces that information with something new or something more preferable. I'm going to give a fairly straightforward example. Sometimes when you move data from spreadsheets or another system inside of Airtable, we talked about how it's not always clean. So in some cases, what we've done before is both use the trim function and the substitute function. Sometimes what will happen is the client data has multiple spaces in between two words. So for example, I'm going to change social media and project 4 and project 5 to have multiple spaces. This is a very common error that people will make. Now, let's say I've got this raw data that's not quite clean, so I might create a new column called project name cleaned. So I've added a new column called project named cleaned. The formula starts with substitute. And again, on the left-hand side, we see Airtable trying to show us how to use this formula. The first thing we're going to select is the string itself, which is the project name. The second part of this formula is to figure out what is the old text you don't want. In my case, it's a double space. And what I want to replace it with is a single space. So in this way, you can see that your project 4, which between project and 4 had 2 spaces, now in the clean version has 1 space. And if this were an actual data migration scenario, I would copy my entire column of cleaned data and paste it into the project name. And that would allow me to have cleaner data with fewer leading and incorrect spaces in my database. The Encode URL function is something that you'll probably use when you start pre-filling forms, but it's also a very important concept to understand. What it does is it turns your text field or a number field into something that can be opened up or displayed in a URL. The letters will stay the same, but sometimes special characters like spaces will get turned into a format that the URL can recognize. We'll use our project name as an example. I'll create a new formula field called Encode URL component. And now you can see that anywhere there is a space, this has turned into a %20. For now, you just need to know that this is a capability inside of Airtable. Until we start creating pre-filled forms, it will not be super important for day-to-day use. Thanks for investing in your own knowledge base. I'm Cherry Yang, the founder of Claribase. We're going to be releasing our flagship course, Airtable Mastery, for free. In the course, you can find over 100 videos on topics like design, integration, automations, and interfaces. It's perfect for the Airtable champion who wants to build their database right the first time. You can sign up for the course at the link down below.